This is the screencast for Lesson 41 in Stephen C# 24-Hour Trainer. This lesson talks about printing in WPF applications. And in this try it, we're going to modify an existing example program so that it prints a window that's been rotated. Here's the original program. Before we get into the code, which is remarkably simple, we only have to make a couple changes, I want to point out a couple of things in here. One is, this is the button that I'm using to print with. If I click on it, you'll notice down here it's selected an image control. There's actually a button control here that contains this image. When you click on any of the controls inside this button, the button intercepts the click events and it takes action. So while the image is displayed in here and the user might click on the image, the button is the thing that actually receives the event. Now you could put events on the image also, but really what we want is a button behavior here, not an image. So that's where we put the event handler. So if we want to see the event handler for that button, I can select the button control, go to the Properties window, click on the Events tab, and there's its click event handler. I'll double click to get into the code, and here it is. So what this example does is it creates the print dialog, it displays it, determines whether the result is true, meaning the user clicked the print button, and then if the user did click print, it calls print window centered. This is the routine described in the text that does the scaling and centering of this thing so we get a nice result. All we need to do here is change the way this thing prints so that it's printing a rotated grid instead of the normal one. That way it'll fill the page better. Doing that's really quite easy. Here's the data grid, the drawing grid control that we create to hold the whole printout. Inside that we put a view box that's going to stretch whatever it contains to fill the available space. Here we deal with the margin if there is one. If there's no margin, we set the stretch property to uniform so that the image can be enlarged. And then down here we create the visual brush using the window that we've been passed in. And then we create a rectangle. That's the thing that actually displays the image. We fill it with that brush right here. Window rec.fill equals the brush we just created. And that's about it. And then the brush fills the rectangle. The rectangle gets stretched by this view box. The view box is contained in the grid, and then the grid grows to fill the available area. So all that we need to do left for this example is rotate the grid. That's really quite easy. We just say drawing grid dot layout transform equals a new rotate transform. We're going to rotate through 90 degrees. That's almost all there is to it. Now, controls have two kinds of transform properties, layout transform and render transform. The render transform rotates the object after it has been positioned. In this case, if we used it, what would happen is all these controls would figure out what sizes they want to be and where they want to be, and then the drawing grid would be rotated after the fact, so it would not be able to take advantage of any available space. The layout transform happens before all that occurs while the controls are still being laid out. So by using the layout transform, that rotates the grid first, then the controls do their arranging, and we get the result that we're more interested in. So let's run the program now and we'll see what's wrong. There's one more problem with this thing. I run the program, I click the button. Here's our print dialog. I'm going to select the Microsoft XPS document writer as my printer. It's not a physical printer, it's more of a logical one. I'll click print. When the document writer starts, it displays this dialog to let me decide where to put the printout. I'll call this tryit41.xps and save. And now, if I can find that directory, there's the document I just created. I'll double click it. This is the XPS viewer, and we can see the printout. I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can see the whole page. And you can see that we achieved most of what we wanted to do. We rotated the grid. That's nice, but there's still a lot of wasted space over here. So why did that happen? Well, the reason it happened was in these two lines up here we set the drawing grid's width equal to the printable area's width. But now that we've rotated the grid sideways, we don't want to do that anymore. The grid's width now is stretched vertically across the page, so we want the width to be the same as the printable area's height. Oh, and I'm still running the program. Let me stop the program. Okay, so we want the grid's width to be the same as the printable area's height, and vice versa. We want its height to be the same as the printable area's width. Now let's run the program and see what happens. I click the button, select the XPS document writer. I'm going to overwrite the existing file that we just created. And that's all there is to it. Let's go find that file, display it again, and now you can see it's much bigger. Zoom out and it fills the page as we wanted.